For 5 attackers after the Soweto Tavern Shooting on Sunday that claimed at least 15 lives. Officers say at least 137 rounds were fired from AK-47 assault rifles at patrons. In a separate incident, another 4 people were killed and 8 wounded in a tavern in Pietermaritzburg. 2 more were killed during a suspected robbery in a tavern in Katlehong, east of Johannesburg. Now, according to some observers, these incidents have reinforced the country's reputation of being violent, with one of the highest murder rates in the world. Eldred de Klerk, Senior Associate of the African Centre for Security and Intelligence Praxis, joins us now for this discussion. Eldred, always a pleasure having you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Leanne, and good morning to your viewers.
I mean, horrific circumstances around these shootings. I mean, AK-47s, 137 rounds, time to reload, and literally just massacre people in a tavern. What is your view on the country's latest or recent tavern murders over these last couple of days?
Well, it's a very good question, Leanne, because it shows a deeply fractured society. It shows a society where some can actually consciously set out, plan, arm themselves, and act in a very horrific and bloody way, and basically mow down fellow citizens. Now, we don't know the motives of this, and until we do, it's going to be very difficult to speculate as to not just why they did it, but what's going on. But what it does show as a deeply traumatized, deeply fractured society, and one that is violent. And it's, we can repeat that forever, that we have to have a healing process in South Africa, and we have to start forging a common identity. On the back of that, we also have to take care of the political economy that continues to show continues to see a deteriorating quality of life for all of South Africa's people.
Yeah. So, in a recent article, I think it was in Reuters, they were talking about the killings, saying that, South Africa, again, reinforcing itself and its bleak status as a global center for murder. This, of course, is, something that we keep getting this reputation for, and unfortunately, rightfully so, because when you hear of stories like this, it is devastating, to say the least, and it's scary for those of us living here. Is it a question of a lawless society or an ill-equipped SAPS lacking in much-needed resources to actually fight crime, or is it just a combination of both of them?
It's probably a combination of both, but ironically, most South Africans are law-abiding. Yes, we, sometimes bend the rule, we litter, we jaywalk, we do the little things that tends to just speed up our daily lives. By and large, though, we're law-abiding. It is the 1 or 2%, and it's their actions that has a deeply, deeply scarring impact on the psyche and on the lives of all of South Africa's people. And until we realize that my security, yours and mine, lies in us, in a common security, rather than me arming myself and only looking after myself and my family, dignified as that is, I also need to be holding hands with my neighbor and with my street and my neighborhood and with all of society, because we need a common, comprehensive security approach to this, which means we need to bolster, strengthen, and arm, if you can excuse the pun, all our public institutions with competent individuals, with public leaders who are publicly spirited and works at the behest and on the behalf of all of South African citizens, and has the public will to follow through on recommendations, policy prescripts, and legislation, and plans at that. So it's a combination of all of society and all of state working jointly together to forge, I believe, a common South African identity, and setting down an understanding of what kind of society, what kind of neighborhood we want to live in. And that's the conversation, I think, that people like yourselves and Sakina and others who are leading on this debate and this asking the critical question are starting to galvanize us around.
Yeah, it's just become so worrying as well, because with conversations like this also comes the conversation, and you see when you look at social media and you get a glimpse into the psyche of South Africans, and you hear about the talk of illegal nationals coming into, foreigners coming into, being heavily armed, moving into communities, and there just doesn't seem to be any repercussions of this. And then hearing stories of Basotho with these ridiculously massive arms that you would find in a war zone, not necessarily on the streets in a community and in a neighborhood. I mean, these are kind of things that you don't necessarily hear happening, but it's so common here that we've almost just turned a blind eye to it, and we go on until, of course, something happens where you have a massacre happening inside of a tavern. What do we do about that? I mean, because this is creating much hatred amongst communities in the country.
Firstly, we need to own that we have a problem. Our borders are porous, and as much as we are an accepting and inviting South Africa, we do expect everybody to play by the rules. It also shows at the weakness at the most local government level possible, which is our municipalities, because we do need to know what our premises, our homes, and other outlets are being used for, who's occupying it, and what activities they get up to, which means we need to start strengthening compliance and regulation, inspections, to make sure that somebody is serving healthy chicken, for example. At the same time, they're not using the premises for storing guns or for selling illegal cigarettes or selling low-quality alcohol, which essentially poisons our systems and our people. So it is strengthening local government, ensuring compliance, strengthening regulation, and ensuring that our borders, that the border agency, which we've spoken about, there's been lots of plans, Leanne, we all know it and we reflect on it. There just don't seem to be the follow through to ensure that the well-made plans are actually actioned. Mm-hmm. And this must be, at the end, we hope, not just a question of political will and resourcing. We hope, though, that it's not a betrayal of the public trust.
Yeah. I want to focus on the issue of taverns for a little bit, because these last 2 weekends, or the last few weekends, we have lost, just in taverns alone, and I'm not talking about anybody else or anywhere else, I'm talking taverns. In Ubani, we lost 21 lives. This weekend, we've just lost, and adding 16, 17, 18 lives. I mean, we're talking about 40 lives, 40 South African lives that have been lost in taverns in the last 2 weekends. Now, the ANC has come out to say that the protection of patrons in taverns should be the responsibility of the owner of that tavern to keep them safe in their properties, and not the responsibility of the security cluster. When you have such a high number, do you think we need a little bit more urgency on this situation? Or is the ANC on the correct view here, that it's not their problem and it should be the problem of the tavern owner, rather?
Well, it's a shared problem. Yes, the tavern owner and anybody who runs a commercial outlet has some responsibility, or has a lot of responsibility, for both protecting their property and their assets and providing a safe environment for patrons. This we know. However, what happens on the streets and what happens on the way to the tavern is something that we all share responsibility for. And our public institutions, like the police, have a critical role to play. Their relationship with tavern owners, understanding what is happening there, the role of the community police forums, the role of our ward committees, and the role of our street committees, and then the role of parents. And as we've heard with what happened in East London, in the Eastern Cape, parents take it on good faith that their kids are going to a safe environment, or they're joining friends, and that they'll come home safely. So it is glib to say that is simply the responsibility of the tavern owner. It's a shared responsibility for which each of us have a critical role, including the tavern owner. We need to basically aggregate that role. We need to say, this is what you do and this is what I do. And together we provide a safe environment. So it's not an either or, it's a both and.
Yeah. I mean, I remember just one of your answers was saying, obviously most South Africans are law-abiding and, we may bend the rules a little bit, and that perhaps therein lies the problem, is that all of us in some way are to blame, and we do all perhaps bend the rules a little bit too much. We really do. I mean, let's just look over this same weekend. I'm going to run over it slightly with my final question too. Over this weekend, it was reported that 15 people were injured when 3 vehicles collided before crashing into a crowd during an illegal drag race in Rustenburg on Sunday. I mean, paramedics found them lying along the sidewalk. Last month, 2 pedestrians were struck by a taxi during a drag race in Tongaat. This looks like signs of lawlessness, where communities just do not respect the law. They take advantage of the absence of law enforcement. They should not be happening in the first place. And then on top of that, you still get reports of police stations that are locked at night because they're too scared to open because of the high crimes. I mean, this is one incident in Garankuwa. What is happening? Again, I ask you, we are facing so many challenges and leadership squabbles within the police itself. How do we govern this country properly in order to bring safety to South Africans?
By having exactly what you're doing is addressing this in an honest and forthright way and saying this is as much responsibility as I as an individual can assume. This is what I can do to work together with others to make sure that we have a safe South Africa. However, it is incumbent upon our public leaders to now step up and exercise the political will to pull straight the police that's been in disarray and dysfunctional for too long. And it's not only the police. We need justice cluster, the whole of the justice cluster, corrections, we need education, health. We need cabinet now to sit down together with us and design a comprehensive strategy for the country that speaks to our national interest and speaks to the kind of society that we want to build. And we look at this budget spend that's going to make sure that we skew it towards realizing this particular understanding and vision that we have for South Africa. Without that conversation, we're going to be taking this and addressing what's in front of us in a very piecemeal manner, and that won't yield the kind of results we want.
We'll leave it there. Thank you for talking to us this morning. Eldred de Klerk, Senior Associate of the African Centre for Security and Intelligence Praxis, discussing public policing and safety in South Africa after the lives lost by South Africans moves higher and higher and higher every single day. And what is happening with law enforcement and how is it being sorted out? These are very important questions we need to keep on asking. All right, it's just gone